Today we're going to talk about figure drawing. The essential question is, what does one learn about body movements and proportion by studying figure in depth? As you can see, there are scaffolded notes in the lower section for figure and gesture. We are going to be talking about gesture as well, which is why the link says that. The learning targets for this unit are: I understand gesture drawings and have created several that show correct proportions and value. I can create a color field or collage that will help give my artwork meaning. And I can utilize unified color value to create my figure drawing so it has meaning due to the color scheme, image choice, and color field utilized in the final piece that has enough contrast to see all the objects easily. The media that can be used for this assignment are chalk pastel, oil pastel, watercolor, gouache, or a combination of 2D art media. Just like other units, we're going to be utilizing the strong work Venn diagram, where you combine composition elements such as the rule of thirds and elements and principles with experimentation of media and techniques, and try to include a cultural commentary or communicated idea. There is a resource artist link in the bottom so that you can get some inspiration from other master artists. Just like in other units, we're going to be using the design process of think, make, and improve. Currently, we're in the think mode. Shortly, we'll be creating gesture drawings and our figure drawings, and then we'll be doing some in-process critiques and completing a digital portfolio to improve the quality of our work. Just like other units, you're going to be asked to do some thumbnail sketches. Technically, our gesture drawings are going to be some of those, but we're going to also ask you to get some images that you can use for your figure once we move into the final figure drawing. The requirements for this assignment are that you'll hand in 3 to 5 gestures from the practice that we're going to be doing during class, and a completed figure with value that is in correct figure proportions. You also need to think of color scheme and mood. In addition, you need to try to communicate a message in your final figure drawing, as well as showing the movement of the figure, and use an experimental background that is unified in the entire piece. We are going to be studying some figure anatomy and musculature again, just so that we really are clear about what the shapes and values might be in the bones and muscular structure that's underneath the figures that we're creating. This is a page from Leonardo da Vinci's sketchbook just to prove to you guys that other master artists have studied anatomy as well. We had created some contour line drawings before, and here you can see a figure done in contour drawing. However, I'm wondering if you guys can figure out why we would create gesture drawings for figures. If you said it's to capture the weight and motion of the figure very quickly, you were correct. So technically, when we do gesture drawings, yes, we are trying to capture the movement of the figure and we're trying to create some value, but they are, generally speaking, warm-up drawings for what we're going to be doing. They also make us think about how the body moves in space and how the angles of your appendages or your arms and legs are going to move in space. Not only can we do gesture drawings of humans, but you technically can do them with animals as well. In a way, animal gestures are harder because animals do not hold still. So when we actually do our gesture drawings, we're going to start with drawings that are between 2 and 5 minutes, and we're going to move to longer drawings after that, in which we're going to be creating value and trying to incorporate a background. So we're going to be doing that in a couple of days after this presentation. So I know we probably haven't talked about futurism with you guys yet, but technically this is a gesture drawing of a cowboy using a rope and making it go around him in several positions, but they're showing all of the positions at once as a gesture drawing, and it's technically like futurism. So if you're interested in learning about that, you can look up futurism in a little while. So again, we had talked about how master artists use gesture drawing techniques as studies for larger works. The one that you're seeing on the left is actually a Degas. One of the things that you're required to do in this assignment is create a collage, color field, or perhaps overlapping in your figure. Here are some examples of that. And just so that you're aware of which one is which, I labeled them here for you. So here I'm wondering why you think color field or collage might help you create loose marks in your figure drawing. Technically, using a color field or collage is going to help you move away from photorealism, which is something that art schools really want you to do. They actually want you to create artworks that have loose marks in them. So that's what we're trying to help you do by making you utilize that in an art piece. So the next question I'm wondering is whether you feel that figures are 9 heads tall. Is that true or false? You can put a thumbs up or a thumbs down for 9 heads tall. That is false. What you'll see here, if you look at the adult version on the left-hand side of this image, adults are technically 7.5 to 8 heads tall, and you can also see a breakup of younger children and somebody that's a toddler there on the right-hand side. When you're drawing figure, you want to think of the figure in basic shapes, just like we did with the hands and feet drawing. So what you're going to do is break them into more cylindrical shapes if you take a look at those. And you can also generalize the torso into different trapezoidal shapes. Here's another page from Da Vinci's sketchbook. It's the Vitruvian Man, and so technically what that's doing is it's showing you a human with its arms and legs spread out would be equal in a circle as well as a square. This image is showing you some figures in perspective and how they would look if they were applied to a one-point perspective. So another thing that you need to think about as you're creating your final figure drawing is you might need to actually include perspective. So that's why we put that last slide in there. This is a Degas. It's actually from ballerinas doing their rehearsal. Again, you want to think about the planes in space. So here you can see a male and female torso, and they have started to add value, but they also broke it up in terms of how the planes shift in space. Now I'm wondering if you can figure out why I was talking about planes in space and the shapes in the figure. If you were thinking to yourself it's so we can draw them more accurately and create convincing value in our drawings, you are correct. So another thing that you need to keep in mind is how loose marks can create different textures. So here I want you to notice the really smooth skin and some really specific edges to the different facial features, and again, the hand that's in this drawing. But then you'll see really loose marks in the lace in the dress and the flowers that are attached to the dress, as well as the flowers in the girl's hair. And then also notice how in the background they made kind of looser marks for the people, and they really kept the people in perspective compared to the woman that's in the foreground. We also need to think about the rule of thirds, as well as contrast, unity, and emphasis. So if you take a look at this image on the left, hopefully you can see the girl is lying on the floor and she is in the very bottom of the photo. So you can see she's in the bottom third of that drawing. And then you can see those really loose marks in the background, which actually helped this student loosen up her drawings in the bottom section of this figure as well. What I also want you to notice is that she really was thinking about the colors that are in here. So you can see the reds are repeated, as well as that ochre color, that's that darker yellow that you're seeing, is repeated in several sections, and the white is repeated in the legs and in the background as well. So I know that this slide has a question about elements and principles on it, which is fine, and you can think about that as well. But I want you to take a look at this drawing. Hopefully what you see is that this person put a price tag on the different sections of the body. And really what this person was doing was suggesting how we're constantly trying to nip and tuck and make everything perfect about a figure rather than accepting figures for who they are. It's a really interesting message in this drawing. So I'm just wondering why you guys think I'm making you create a message or mood in your final drawing. If you thought to yourself, it's so that people take some time to really look at your artwork and to make you stronger artists, you were correct. So of course your artwork is meant to be beautiful, but honestly, we're trying to always communicate something. So this is really that point where we are always going to be trying to communicate an idea or have some social or cultural commentary in our artworks from now on. Again, there are some different color schemes that you can utilize, and we've got some different moods in here that the different colors may or may not portray. So now I'm wondering why you think we use colors to create mood in a piece of artwork. Just so that you're aware, different colors can enhance the subject matter and the background to help your piece tell a story. So it's partly to help communicate that idea if that's a little bit more challenging for you. Here's another Degas where they're using the lights and darks within this piece. It is technically a sepia toned image, which means it has browns and all the highlights and shadows of what would be considered with brown. Here you can see the intensity of the lights on the stage, and then you're seeing the backstage areas that are very, very dark. Hopefully you can see how the mood changes here when we have all the light flooding in to a studio space from the daytime as opposed to a nighttime image we just saw. Another different color scheme here where these two young girls are putting fireflies inside the different lanterns, and it looks like it might be sunset or like the sun has just set. So they're starting to see the glow of those lanterns, and there's darker colors in the garden that these girls are in. Here's another image that obviously conveys a mood where this man has just survived the storm and the sea. It is technically a watercolor painting done by Homer. So hopefully you can see, as I'm showing you the different images here, different messages and moods. I also want you to think about those different value techniques we had talked about. Here you can see the person is using a combination of scumbling and crosshatch to communicate the value of where this figure is lying in space. Again, just a reminder of the different value techniques. So again, this is just another reminder of mixing different value techniques where you can have smooth and textural things together to really tell the story of what's going on, as well as what the figure is doing. So I'm just wondering what value technique you might be thinking of using for your drawing. You don't have to actually answer, but start thinking about what image you're going to use, how the figure is going to show movement, and then also what kind of value techniques and color scheme you're going to use. Remember, combining the value techniques creates contrast in your drawing, and you're going to want to do that as well. This is just a reminder about that foreshortening that might happen. So again, foreshortening is when an object is pointed at you and the shapes look different than what you might think of for different parts of the body. So it's really important to really look at the shapes that you're seeing as you're trying to draw the different parts of the figure. I just went over this, but I'm just wondering if you can remember why you want to concentrate on shapes when you're drawing something that's foreshortened. Again, if you said it's that you can draw things more accurately and have the object be more realistic and believable, you were correct. So another thing that you want to think about, I had talked about overlapping figures a little bit earlier. Here is an image done by Aaron Douglas. It is a part of the Harlem Renaissance. It was done in 1934 during Prohibition. So what you're seeing here is these individuals went out into the woods and they're having a party with the lights of their car, and they're having music and they're having drinks and they're having just a good old time. And you can see the layering effect of the different silhouettes that are put one on top of each other to tell the story of where these individuals are. Another thing that's really interesting about this piece is it's panoramic, which means it's a lot longer than it is tall. And in this image, this was actually a poster done for the Olympic Games in 1971 by Jacob Lawrence. You can see the patella and the gastrocnemius. And if you don't understand what those are, once we start studying the figure anatomy, that will become more clear. Again, this is another contour line drawing of a figure by Matisse. It was done in 1944. So again, this is just a reminder to practice with the different media. If you're using a different media than you had used before on either the same kind of paper or substrate that you're using. So if you did a collage, you might want to do a little sample of a collage before you start using the different media. Or you can also do it in your sketchbook just to get an idea. This is a more photorealistic image done by Vermeer. Here's another example of using collage and trying to create a meaning. So this individual was a Nicolay student. That's actually him in the drawing. I photographed him doing a dragon kick in the hallway, and then he created a collage and tried to recreate that figure in motion in this drawing, but he needed to tell a story. So he actually created the alleyway that you're seeing behind him with the bricks and the different parts of perspective that you can see going back in space. Just really think about your facial expressions. As you could see, many of the figure drawings that I showed as example had faces in them, and that's also why we did the hands and feet. So here's another example. I think I might have showed this during the last assignment. It has a lot of meaning, and I think I talked about what it was before. Technically, it's really introspection. So this person is looking into themselves and they're seeing the balloon filled with helium and it's starting to rise. The balloon filled with helium is representing their soul searching for meaning. So this question is, how do you think the artist created those blurry figures in the background? If you said they put some color down and then rubbed them with your finger, you're correct. They really did need to keep them into the general shapes of the figures, and they had to think about making them smaller compared to the player that's going up for the dunk. So this is another example of loose mark making. Technically, this was done during the gesture drawing unit, but it is almost a finished drawing. It probably could use a little bit more contrast, but it's really pretty well done. It shows the figure in correct proportion, and it's showing some of the background that was there as well as what the figure was lying on. So again, we had talked about this before when we showed the figure unit. This is actually the full drawing, and this is why in that figure unit, when I said it's really about anxiety and the person is frantically trying to do something, I can't quite tell if she's searching for something or what happened to this particular person. It almost looks like she's a ballerina. Did she fall? Did she drop something and now she's looking for it? I'm not quite sure. So this is another example of combining scumbling over the top of value that was already smudged. So again, that person did the colors underneath first and smudged them together and then created those really loose marks over the top to create a more unique drawing. Remember, as you move through this, you're going to need to take process photos, and then you're also going to need to analyze how you completed the design process outcomes for your digital portfolio. In addition, you should be using a resource artist and analyzing how your work is like that person's. And as you can see here, you should really make sure to highlight the terminology that you used. At this point, you should be able to summarize the essential question from the beginning, and we're going to take some time to create either the color field or collage that you want to do. You can also take some time to look for your resource artist or perhaps the image that you're using that creates movement in the figure as well. During the next class, we're going to be doing the gestures that we talked about.